This is a spare Speedo that I bought to replace the Speedo in my car that's obviously not working. How I got to this point I'll show you in a moment, but I guess I'll just go through the bits and pieces and why. I'm making this video because obviously my video stopped, my Speedo stopped working. Took me a little bit of time to work out that it was actually the Speedo that was the problem, because I checked out, the speed sensor, the speed adapter, because I've run a converter to adjust the Speedo speed. I checked out the wiring, and after all that proved to be all good. The end result was that the Speedo was the issue, and I've pulled it apart. I spoke to a bloke, and I've done some stuff here, and he wanted to know how to do some of it, so I thought I may as well video the whole process. Now, of course, you could just go out and buy a replacement whole cluster like this one, but I've individually played with mine before and have some individual things going on in my Speedo with different lights and wiring and whatnot, so I just wanted to replace the Speedo unit itself. And the other thing was the Speedo that I got, and this is the one that I got, but I've already played with it, and I'll show you how I did it. But it used to have about 360,000 kilometers on the clock, and I've adjusted the Speedo to bring it back to what my car actually is, so that it's now true to my vehicle once I put it back together. So this is the original Speedo in my car. You can see the Speedo matches closer to what that other one was that I showed you a minute ago. And I've still got to make some minor adjustments for kilometers I've driven since then, but we'll get to that shortly. Getting the Speedo out, it's not terribly difficult, but it can be a little bit fiddly and, get your hands in some tight spots, but it really isn't too difficult. First thing is there's a screw just under here, a matching one on this side here, and the tricky one is kind of up here, and I'll show you this with moving that one out of the way. But just up there, you can see that cover plate. Now, that cover plate has got this little plastic cover over it, and just get a little flat screwdriver and pop that off. But the trick really is, I found the easiest way to get that screw out of there is to make up a little screwdriver with a 1/4 inch socket and a little adapter to increase its size and make it easier to grab, and a Phillips head screw adapter on it, and make a really stubby screwdriver, because even a stubby Phillips just doesn't fit in there comfortably to get to that screw, to get that out easily enough. Another tip is I tend to wrap that up with electrical tape just to stop that bit falling out, because if it ends up going down into your AC vents, it's a much bigger job to try and recover it, so it's easier for it not to happen. And then the other thing is, when you loosen it, if you can find yourself a magnet of some sort to attach to this as you get that screw out, it helps that screw come out attached to here, and you don't end up dropping it down there as well. So that's just a little tip. It helps, and we'll get that out very shortly. I've got that one out at the moment, and I'll get the other two off, and then we'll move to the next stage. So those 3 screws allow this fascia panel to come off. Obviously, you've got those 2 switches on that side, which are the rear fog and the cruise control switch, the hazard lights and the rear demist, and they've got plugs behind them. You just got to press the buttons and undo those wiring harnesses. There's the fascia panel that I've removed. You can see that's out. You can see the wiring behind here. Don't worry too much about labeling those. There's only one place they can go. They generally sit where they've got to sit. The main thing is you just watch when you're putting the Speedo back in that you don't push them into the dash and lose them. but you know, that one only goes on the top one, that one only goes on the bottom, and same on that side there. And here's the first look at the Speedo cluster like you saw on the other one. You've got a screw here, a screw up top there, and one more on that side, and then that will pop the Speedo cluster forward. And then there's 5 electrical plugs behind there to undo, and I'll show you once I've got those out. So there's the cluster there. I have undone the plugs at the back, which makes it free. There's 4 wiring plugs behind there, which you'll see this right hand side white one and right hand side black one. These are the 2 from before. And then on the left side you've got the top left back one, the bottom right back one, bottom left back one, I'm sorry, and these ones here. These ones, if you have a look at them, are the actual Speedo signal wires. So the blue one is the actual Speedo signal that comes from the Speedo sensor, and the yellow one is an output signal that goes across the dash and to the other side and down to the computer, to give the computer the signal from the Speedo to say what speed you're doing. It uses it from time to time for different bits and pieces. In my car, I've put a 4M41 conversion with a computer from the 4M41 motor, and as soon as the Speedo's not working, it limits the engine to 3,000 revs, so that's another issue that I was having. There's the Speedo out of the car in all its glory. So we'll take that inside shortly, and we'll take it apart and have a look at how to get to the bits and pieces. You'll see on the back of it, it's got the circuit board. You can see a little bit of my adapted wiring that I've got to run a couple of extra lights and things, and yeah, I just didn't want to muck with it, so I'm just going to keep that one and put my original, put the new Speedo in there that I've got, and happy days. And the 5 plugs go here, 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 and also the Speedo plug goes there. You might see that I've put some labels here, and they're kind of not really necessary because they only go in one place, but earlier on I've had the wiring harness out completely and everything got a bit tangled, and I just wanted to make sure that the right hand side black one and the right hand side white one, the left hand side black one and the left hand side white one, I knew where they went, just so that I could orientate them in the correct spots, but they do only go in one spot, so you're pretty safe, and they'll stay where they need to go, so they'll just plug straight back in. Taking off the Speedo plug from here, when you're taking it off on the dash, it's just a bit tricky because there's a little push pin like all the other things tend to have, but it's just a bit more difficult to grip, so just be a bit patient with it and it'll pop off. So as I said before, that's the Speedo signal. If you follow that on the board, it comes around to this screw here. You'll see the word in written here, and you follow that one, it comes down to out, and then the other 2 screws here, this one comes up here, is written as ignition. This one hasn't got anything written on it, comes up to pin 13 on there. You chase that on the wiring, have a look at the color of it. It's a black wire, and quite obviously it's an earth or a negative, and we'll use that later, and we can actually run the Speedo without it being in the car to get a simulation of what's happening. What you'll see here at the moment is a bit of a dodgy thing that I did. I've just tied a bit of wire to tie those 2 terminals together, because while the Speedo wasn't working, I just connected the input to the output, so that the speed signal that was coming up from the speed sensor went out to the computer, so that the computer thought the car was moving, and it gave me more than 3,000 revs. But what I'm going to do now is we'll flip this over, and if we open it up, we can then get the Speedo out of there, and we can then start to replace that. So just around the outside, very simply, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Phillips head screws, and we'll just pop those ones out, and we'll take the face of the Speedo apart. When you get all these screws out of here, they're quite sharp screws, and they go into this white plastic stuff. And you can see just there, maybe if I can focus it a little bit, this powder that comes out with it. So it's kind of just a bit of a warning, and you can see there's the powder on my hand. It's a bit of a warning when you put this together. Don't over tighten these screws, because this old plastic does get a bit brittle, and you don't want to strip those threads out, or you just won't get a full closure. But the other thing to watch is this white plastic that all comes out of here in powders up, and this being Perspex, a lot of static electricity pulls this in, and it ends up just everywhere. So just try and be careful with where all that white plastic goes, because it ends up on the inside of the Perspex panel, and you end up with flecks and specks and stuff all over your display. Ask me how I know. And so here's our first look at that coming off. So the Perspex panel just comes off to the side, leaving us with the next layer in, and again that layer just lifts off again out of the way. Again, when you're putting all this back together, you just want to try and be careful not to include too much dust and fragments and whatnot, because you'll end up just chasing your tail forever. So there's the assembly. You can see it's made in a few different parts, because what looks like all one piece is now the Speedo, the tacho, and then the fuel and the temperature gauge. And then in the middle, you've got your center lights. You can see, if I get the reflection off there, I've made a little bit of a modification to that, because I've got a front diff locker in mine, and I put a light in for that. I've moved the center diff lock light to the top there, and that way when I've got my front locker on, I've got a front locker light, and it's just a bit special, but works. Here are all the filters for the different lights that come up on the car, and that's where I've put my glow plug light, because this is a V6 petrol dash, and I've got a 4M41 diesel motor in it with a glow plug. So that's the glow plug light, that's the fuel filter light, and I've just got those out of the Triton that I put the engine in with. Back on the rear side of the cluster again, these 4 screws. So not only are they the electrical contacts for the Speedo, but they're the actual physical mounting of it as well. So these 4 are used to hold the Speedo down, and that's also the attachment points and the contact points for everything. So we'll just take that apart and take that out. And later on, when we do the testing, we're going to use the ignition, the negative, and this input here, and that'll show us the Speedo moving. And you can see just by taking that last one out there, the Speedo has now come free, and there's our Speedo sitting here, ready to replace with the replacement unit that I showed you earlier. So this is the new Speedo I showed you before, and really all we've got to do is line that up with these little lugs. You can see that one up top there and down the bottom here, and that just sits in, and we'll hold it in from the other side and do the screws up, and that'll be fixed and electrically connected and ready to go. But I'll do that, and then I'll come back to this one here, and I'll actually pull it apart and show you how I can redial the odometer to pick whatever Speedo setting or kilometre range that we like. Obviously you could do this for nefarious means, but look, I'm not in it for that. Really, I just want to display the real kilometres that I'm doing. I guess if I did a top-to-toe rebuild on the car and changed absolutely everything and really made it into a brand new vehicle again, I might dial it back to a low number and start again. But to be honest, all I really want is to know how far my car's driven and check on the distances between services, and just keep all that stuff, you know, real. Right, so this is the Speedo that we are going to pull apart and have a look at. This is my broken one, but for all intents and purposes it's the same as the other one, and we'll pull it apart and dial up whatever speed, whatever kilometers we want, and we can to set it to whatever. So, you know, just for arbitrary reasons, let's just say we wanted to dial it to 3,000, you know, 350,000, say 600 kilometers. So that's just a number I've pulled out of my head now. So let's make it do that. You don't need any real special tools to do this, and this is you know, pretty simple really. Can be a bit fiddly, but it's not too hard. These tweezers I got with a 3D printer. They're quite helpful, because probably one of the most difficult things to do is being delicate and taking off the Speedo needle, so that you take that off and then get these two screws out and take this face plate off. What I've got here is just a thin piece of cardboard. I've cut this hole in it because the needle has got a collar there, and it's just easier if that gets around that. Then this just protects the face of the Speedo. So we're going to thread that behind here, something like this, just to try and get that behind the Speedo needle. Just see if I can do that without making too much of a mess of it. Something like that. And then if we put this tweezers under here and keep it on the paper so that we don't stab the Speedo, and just gently prise this upwards, and you can just do it carefully, and you can feel it starting to move. And before they get that all the way off, I'll stop about there. And now I'm going to take this out. It hasn't actually come off the bottom yet, but there it is resting against 0. And if I just get that over the zeroing needle, it falls to here. I've put this one back together, so that's where I left it. But when I first took it off, it did something similar. When I did the last one, I looked at it closely, and the 0 was sort of somewhere in line with the top of the 0 here. So if you want to sort of do that and then just lift it over there and push it down when you're putting it on, it should put it back to where it was in a factory kind of situation. But now that I've loosened that, I can lift that off, put the needle aside, and we'll come back to that later. We've got these two screws here, and these two screws just hold the face of the Speedo on. And again, it's just a simple matter of pulling those ones out, so we'll do that. And as you take that one off, it just seems to come off with this, the back clear plastic. No, it doesn't. So that's the Speedo face off. Then the clear plastic. This is just a bit of a supporting face, but what it also is actually just a fiber optic distribution mechanism. The lights from the dash sit behind this round here and this round here, and that just distributes the light around the instruments and lights up your odometer and what have you. So that just comes off as well, and you set that aside. And again, there's a look at our numbers. So look, it's really not all that difficult. What we need is a small screwdriver. This one here, it's out of a precision screwdriver kit, and it's probably one of the smallest ones. This top row here of cogs are locking cogs, and they lock the numbers from rolling. But really, there's the worm drive that the Speedo turns, which in turn turns this one, which cogs turn this and roll it, but at the same time turning this, which then gives you the distances that you've travelled. So I find it's easier to use something like a garden glove. Again, just something leather on your hand here. Again, you'll know why I know. But if you put some pressure here against this one and put pressure against here, what we're going to do is we're going to put pressure on this pin to just gently start that moving. You can see that starting to come out here, okay? And I've just moved that just enough here to get it moving, and you can see there's some spikes on here which engage it in that, which is what actually locks it all together. So doing that, I've got myself a fancy paper clip, so we can all see what that was. This is the bigger version of the paper clip, and the reason I chose the bigger one is just the wire diameter is a little bit thicker. And what that does is we can put that through this hole and just gently push that through and come through to the cog that we want to adjust, because you can see that it starts to make this loose enough that we can then move them off there and we can dial whatever we want. Okay, so we said we're going to keep 3, so let's keep 3 and push that back now to here. And what I might do is I might see if I can actually zoom you guys in a bit closer so you can see this just maybe a little bit better. Let's have a look. Yeah, kind of, that's better. Might try and move that into the center. So you can see again here, that's the cog, that's securing that, and what we're going to do is we're going to dial up the speed that we want. Again, I said speed, but you know I mean distance. So we're going to keep the 3. Let's keep that there. We've got the okay, so now we're at a point where the 0, we said, what did we say? 3, 6. So we'll keep that one there. And now we've got a 6. Simple. Now, everything does line up when the cogs are in their right place. So there the 6 is locked in. Now we'll go with a 5, for example. So one thing you do have to be careful of, there's kind of 2 almost correct positions for these Speedo wheels to be in. So when you take the pressure off here and move it, and as I said 5, so let's go to 5. But if we go kind of half off, we can be what we think is correct, but it sets the Speedo so the number sits there, okay? And then you'll forever have a digit that's half off. And if we kind of have a look at that with the Speedo face over the top, it looks really wrong, okay? So there's two spots it could be in, and you know, if you happen to let them all go and roll them and then line them all up, you're tempted to line it up here rather than here, and then your numbers are all out of whack. So just be a little bit careful that you do line it up correctly, otherwise your Speedo does look like it's been tampered with. Let me just grab that, dial it back to the 5 that we want. Where are you? Grab it there, push it down to where it's got to be. So kind of you get the picture. Do I need to do every one? Let's make it 0. Again, I've got it in the wrong spot. I'll go one more divot. Okay, so 0, 0, 0, and go to the last one now. Sometimes actually this is the hardest one to adjust, so it's probably, no, it's the least important. But let's go to a 0 on that one as well for the sake of the exercise. Where are we? Yeah, let's leave it. But it is easy enough to do. Okay, so to lock that in, just push that back to here and push that back in. I wouldn't just push firmly against this because it's going to end up causing cracking of this plastic again. Remember, this is an old Pajero. It's very old plastic. You don't really want to be forcing it. So the easiest thing to do is maybe just compress this here and push that back in like that. And that's locked that away. And now that's permanently set. All right. Now, the easiest way to roll the this one here is really just to roll the speed. So with my other one, I do want to record how many Ks I've done since the last tank. And so what I always do is I zero when I'm filling up. So what I did in this case is I actually dialed up the number I had on the odometer when I last fueled up. And then what you can do is I'll back you out a little bit so you can see. Yeah, I've got some of those numbers. Okay, so there we are again with a bigger view. So yeah, to make modification to this, it's easiest to roll the odometer. But you can see the worm drive locks onto this cog and stops anything from happening. Again, it's fairly simple. On the back of the Speedo, if we undo this plastic, this Phillips head screw, and it doesn't have to come out all the way, just enough, maybe like that is enough. Now what we're going to do is just take something and just gently flex this here. What you can see that's done, it's disengaged the motor from the cog. And really, all we need to then do is pick whatever we want. So if we had have reset that, excuse me, if we had have reset that to what it was when you last fueled up, run the kilometers you want to run, bring it to, let's take it up to 50 Ks. So it just runs around to 47, 48, 49, 50 Ks. Here we go, we've just done 50 kilometers. Okay, we can pull that out, just flex that back together. The worm drive re-engages to here, and we'll simply tighten that up. And there it is. So now we've got whatever number we want on the clock and whatever number we want here on the clock, okay? And we're all good to go. So really now it's just a case of assembly is the opposite of disassembly. So we'll put the light, let's do it correctly, back on top. It does locate itself there. That one goes through here. And the connecting screws go in the top right there. Now that we've got all of that together, it's really just simply a matter of putting the needle back on. Just before we do that, if we turn that over, you can see that's the reason why I made that a little bit bigger, and I guess you don't need to make it too big. to get over that plastic that goes over this center needle here. But if we just position it where we said we need it to be, so it just goes over the hole, if we can see it, and line it up. Okay, there it is there. I might even just adjust it a little bit. Let's just say there. So we'll start pushing that down so it engages a little. But before we've got to flex it too far to get over the zero, we'll do it now and then finish pushing it down. And that's your Speedo now all back together. Really, that's ready to reassemble and put back in the car, put back in the Speedo box. And as you can see, I'll bring my other one across here and I'll zoom you out. And that's it all back together like I did earlier. And that's ready to go back in the car. But before we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to test it. And I've set that up, like I said, with my last refill. I can get some of that light off it. And also with the right kilometres. And I've done 14.2 kilometres again since this particular point, because I've been keeping an eye on it with the GPS. So I'm going to do that electrically and run the Speedo just to sort of show you how it works. And to do that, what we've done is just attach, I showed you these electrical connections before, ignition or positive, the negative, which is the black wire, and the input signal. So what we need is we need to connect that to 12 volts, that to the negative, and the Speedo pulse. And if we just turn the simulated Speedo adapter, we'll just suddenly start getting turning of that, and we'll go to the car and we'll get 12 volts, and we'll do that very shortly. Okay, so back in the car. These are my test wires all set up. You'll have to forgive the fact that I've got two black wires, but you know, like I said, they're in their respective locations. This is the original Speedo sender out of this original car with the V6 petrol engine in it. I've just wired up a harness here. All it requires is a positive, a negative, which again, I had a brown wire available and I used that for the negative, and the signal. So it just really needs a positive, a negative, and a signal. And when that turns, and what you'll see if you look at that, it's just a socket taped to the, if you look carefully, you might see the cog striations here. So really that's all that is a cog. And as that turns around, it gives a signal which tells the Speedo that it's turning. So what I'm going to do is hook that up and show you how that works. Just give me one sec. This is kind of a little bit clumsy, but you see how it works. That's the negative that we said before, hooked up to the negative of the test rig, and with a clamp to a negative source, and also a clamp to a positive source with the positive, and then the signal wire going to here. This is it flipped over. Again, you can see we've got 144 point, how many kilometers have we got there? 144.8. I want to run another 14.2 kilometers onto here, so that brings it up to 158.1. That'll be 159. So I want to bring that up to 159 kilometers. So I've got that hooked up to the test rig, which is hooked up to the drill. And if I can make this turn, there's the Speedo running, there's the Tacho running, that's everything going. and we're doing 80 at the moment. You can run that up, and I'll keep that going. I'll do that off camera, and I'll bring that up to my 159 that I need. I'll just finish that off. Even running at 180 kilometres an hour, this is slow, so note to self, don't do it this way next time. 159 kilometres on that, on the meters, and that's the actual now current and correct speedo. So really, assembly again is the opposite of disassembly. So we'll put all this now back together, plugging in all my wires and whatnot, and we'll see if we can take it for a run and see how it works on the road. This is awkward to do, but probably a better view of what I was talking about before. You can see this this screw here and the screwdriver fitting directly over that. It really gets up to the windshield, and even a stubby screwdriver isn't enough here. But if you use this little adapter that you made, it makes it a lot easier to access this screw, because the windshield does get in the way, and makes that job a hell of a lot easier. You can see what I'm talking about there maybe, but anyway, you'll get the picture and you'll work it out. And there's the little cover plate back on it. You can see where the screwdriver goes in to pop it out. Just when you do that, there are little tabs kind of in that area there and over here somewhere. So you got to make sure they line up when you put the dash cowl back on, because if they don't line up, then the center screw doesn't line up, and then you're more likely to lose stuff down the AC vents and all of that. So just be a bit careful putting it back together, but it all goes back together pretty easily. These old cars are made to reassemble and disassemble, and yeah, they're a nice easy one to work on. So that's it there. We'll finish putting that dash back together and tidy up some of this mess and go for a run. Okay, well, look, I apologise for the interesting angle. I'm not all about the video stuff, but I'm in my driveway. I'll back out and we'll see if we can see this Speedo doing its thing. Just let me get out of the driveway first, I guess. Appears to be operational. Happy days. All right, I'll end it there. I guess before I finish, I'll show you the lights I was talking about before. That's just my two-wheel drive lights. Remembering I've converted this to a 4M41 out of a Triton, and so the center diff lock really just comes in when you put it in four-wheel drive, so it sort of doesn't interest me anymore. So I've converted that to that front locker light. This car did not originally have a rear locker, but I've wired up a rear locker in it and wired the light up to the dashboard there. And there's the front one that that indicates on, which is on, I know, regardless of it not being in four-wheel drive, but there are the four-wheel drive lights if you want to see them. Yeah, the front locker will turn on and off regardless of that. I can actually, I've got it wired so the front locker will operate independently of the rear, so it's easy enough to select whichever locker I need out on the road. You know, it says Super Select, that's the old one, but it doesn't, it's not a Super Select anymore. I've actually gone to the effort of removing the auto hubs and whatnot, and all the vacuum lines, and just put manual locking hubs, and that way it's always in, it's always known, and these lights on the dash won't flash for me. As you can see there, they're the manual locking hubs I've put in it. That way it's not a worry as to whether it's engaged or not engaged. There's my Pajero, but as you can see, it's a shorty. It's a fun little project, and I've put a diesel bonnet on it just for the sake of it. It doesn't need that, but you know, I've done it just because I like the look of it. Eventually I'll get that sprayed and the correct colour. There it is idling away. The 4M41 ticks away, makes a nice little sound, and yeah, it's a fun little project. Thanks for watching.